He cracked the uncrackable code. He dreamed of machines that could think. Yet society betrayed him. This is the hidden story of Alan Turing. Born in 1912, Alan was a boy obsessed with numbers and puzzles. While other kids played games, he explored imaginary worlds made of logic. At school, he was an outsider, misunderstood by most, but everyone knew he was brilliant. At 11, he entered King's College, Cambridge University. There, his mind exploded with ideas. He saw patterns in music. He spoke multiple languages fluently and became friends with the brilliant mathematician Max Newman. Together, they would play a game that would change history. The year is 1936. Alan is 24 years old and about to start his first job as a mathematician at Cambridge. But soon, something else catches his attention. In philosophy class, he hears a question posed by the great philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. Can machines think? No one has an answer. Everyone talks over each other. And when it's time to leave, only Alan stays behind. That day, he realizes he wants to devote his life to this question. So he returns to his office and starts playing a game. With paper and pencil, on one side, he draws a machine. On the other side, he draws a human brain. Then he asks himself a series of questions. Which one thinks? How does it think? Is it possible for a machine to think exactly like a human? Over the next 3 years, he will live with these questions. But soon, the world will give him the inspiration he needs to find an answer. And in Britain, there is only one thing on people's minds: survival. Soon, this survival will depend on Alan's new obsession. You see, the Germans have invented the Enigma machine, an encryption device so advanced that it was thought to be unbreakable. But there is someone who can help Britain decode the enemy messages: Alan Turing. In September 1939, just days after the war began, Alan received a letter from the British government. They invited him to join a top-secret unit of code breakers at Bletchley Park. Days later, he arrived at the estate wearing a dinner jacket. He looked like he was going to a party, except that everyone stared at him awkwardly because he wasn't. In fact, anyone who worked at Bletchley Park had to wear their finest clothes even though they were working in a war zone. You see, the place was full of spies and secrets, and they didn't want anyone slipping out without noticing. Alan would later call it the Ministry of Unglue. His job was to break the German naval Enigma code. But soon he realized the task was almost impossible. The Germans changed their codes daily, and Enigma's encryption was too complex for humans. That is when Alan had an idea. He would build a machine to do the hard work for him. Every day, Enigma would use a different plug board setting. These settings determined the entry and exit points of the wires inside the machine. And the only way to crack Enigma was to try all the settings, a task that would take a team of experts months. But that is how long Alan gave himself. By hand, it would take 10 to the power of 14 years to check all the settings. But what if we could automate this process? What if there was a machine that could do the work of 10 million mathematicians? But everyone around him laughed at his plan. The engineers said it was crazy, and the mathematicians said it was impossible. But Alan spent anyway. His evenings in the hut, fueled by cigarettes and coffee, he designed a machine that would test thousands of plugboard settings in minutes. He called it the bomb. In reality, it was a giant electromechanical device consisting of 80 for telephone relays and 240 switches. At first, the bombs were not accurate enough. So Alan went back to the drawing board. He wanted more wheels and more rotors. He needed more ways to track the settings, but building a new bomb would take time, resources that they didn't have. But Alan had an idea. He would use the Germans themselves to improve his design. You see, the Germans had built 150,000 Enigma machines, all slightly different. But Alan realized that it didn't really matter. Because they were all based on the same algorithm, he could decipher the messages of one machine with the help of another. And that's what he did. He started with 2 machines. Then he created a crib, a massive catalog of known messages. As the cribs grew, So did the bomb's accuracy. Soon they were ready for action. By June 1942, the bomb had decoded the German plans and alerted the British convoys. 27 ships were saved and hundreds of lives. But the impact of the bomb went far beyond that. Winston Churchill believed that it shortened the war by 2 years and saved millions of lives. After the war, Alan would continue doing what he loved best, inventing. He helped design the first modern computer. He developed algorithms for artificial intelligence, and he continued answering that one, can machines think? In 1950, he wrote a paper titled Computing Machinery and Intelligence. In it, he argued that machines can indeed think like humans. All we need to do is teach them how. And so he came up with the ultimate test, a way to measure artificial intelligence. He called it the Turing test. Here's how it works. Let's imagine a human interrogator sitting behind a screen. He's talking to someone, but he doesn't know whether the person is a machine or a human, and the goal of the machine is to convince the interrogator that it is human. To do that, the machine must respond to everything the interrogator says. It must understand the context. It must use body language, facial expressions, gestures. Basically, it must think like a human. When Alan suggested this test, everyone agreed. It seemed perfect. And yet few knew that he himself was hiding from the law. You see, during the war, Alan had met a man named Arnold Murray. They became close friends. But in 1952, the British government exposed Alan's private life. The same government he helped save was now persecuting him. You see, England had a law that criminalized homosexuality. Even before the war, Alan's colleagues had noticed his unusual interest in men. Someone leaked the details to the police. And when Alan was arrested, the media jumped on the story. He was tried in court. He was forced to choose between prison and castration. He chose castration. It was the worst humiliation imaginable. The side effects were brutal. He became impotent, depressed, and deeply ashamed. Turing took his own life just 2 years later. For many years, his contribution to science was forgotten. Even in the computer labs he helped build, his name disappeared from the walls. But in the 1990s, historians finally uncovered his story. People started talking about him again. His story became a symbol of persecution. Many scientists blamed the government for stifling innovation, and in 2013, the Queen herself granted him a royal pardon. Since then, his name has been cleared. Statues have been erected in his honor, and the world remembers him as a genius. Today, you can visit the museum in his old home where he lived, worked, and died. It's a place filled with math books and journals, notes and papers. It's a reminder of the quiet cost of persecution and a tribute to the legacy of a man whose ideas live on. Every time you talk to a chat bot, every time you play a video game, every time you see a self-driving car, you are witnessing the genius of Alan Turing. He showed us the limitless potential of artificial intelligence and taught us that machines can think. In fact, some believe that he might have been one of us, that he was an alien who returned to his planet after his death. That's why no one saw his body at the funeral. So the next time you watch a robot movie, ask yourself, would Turing approve?